Aloha. My name is Roger Jellinek. I'm executive director of the Hawaii Book and Music Festival. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Jason Quinn and to be his moderator for this session, who has written a really remarkable novel, probably one of the more intense reads that I've experienced in quite a while. I'll start by giving you his own synopsis of the novel, and then we'll get into the main content of this interview. On the surface, the novel Concrete Rainbow is the coming-of-age story of a troubled boy caught up in the horrors of drugs and crime. But underneath, it's a meditative study of human behavior, the nuances of cultural identity, and the effects of trauma and abuse on children in a callous society. Concrete Rainbow focuses on Byron, an angry biracial 15-year-old poet, and Kimo, a native Hawaiian felon, who's part crime boss, part philosopher. As the two fight their way through the contrasting landscape of Oahu during the crystal meth epidemic in the early 90s, they find that they share an unspeakable trauma. Through Byron's poetry, humor, violence, and gut-wrenching honesty, Jason Quinn not only describes the dark parts of Hawaii that tourists rarely see, he describes the darkest parts within us all. Well, that's quite a high stakes to present to attendees. Jason, you are probably one of the most celebrated actors. We're based here in Hawaii. Are you working now?
Auditioning now. Yeah, the last piece I did was a couple of months ago out in Atlanta. We were talking a little bit about that. A lot of the productions are moving to Atlanta, so getting to see Atlanta for the first time. But I'm not shooting anything currently. The big push, I just sort of like step away for a couple of months to get this whole project off.
Well, it's quite a project. Give us a sense of your background, because it's totally relevant to the novel. Where do you come from? I believe you started on Oahu.
Yeah, I was raised here. My mother was in the military, so she came out here, and we were young, and then we moved away, and then we came back, and I was a large part in Ewa Beach on the west side, Ewa Beach, Makakilo, Kapolei, and then after a while, kind of slipped under the radar a little bit and met a lot of the people who were the inspiration for the characters in this book, and was able to narrowly avoid a different life and get into the arts and theater and acting and writing and movies, and sort of go in a different trajectory.
Well, given what you describe in the novel, that really was an escape, quite extraordinary. The title, Concrete Rainbow, was that another name for Waikiki and tourism?
That is. New York is the concrete jungle, right? And for some of the people that I was hanging out with, it became a nickname for sort of the downtown Waikiki area, sort of like Hotel Street, all the way over to the Hilton Hawaiian Village, because the Hilton still has that big rainbow there, right? And that's a concrete rainbow. Yeah.
We see the image of the cover and the picture behind you there. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's just get into the main situation of the novel. How it starts. Can you describe how it starts?
Yeah. So the main character, Byron, is 15 years old, and he is sort of pulled back to Hawaii, and he's sort of harboring a lot of resentment. And on the surface, he thinks it's resentment to moving away from where he was and what was going on with him at the time. But he's got a very, very troubled background, and a problem with self-delusion, and a problem with anger. And you take that and stick that into that kid standing there in Ewa Beach having to move in with a stepdad that he doesn't know, and has resentment to his mother for the situation that's happening. And he starts hanging out with the wrong kids, and that becomes fuel to the anger that he already has, and then starts getting wrapped up in drugs and violence, and slowly sort of circles the toilet bowl, going down to what is his stepfather called where the real people are, where the real sharks are, where the real rocks are.
Interesting. Wow. And the character Byron is a student at Campbell High School.
Correct.
Can you describe the Campbell High School that you portray in the novel?
The West Side, East Side High, right? The West Side, East Side High. Yeah, Campbell High School went through a tough time. Actually, and that's where we get to the point of it, where like this whole thing is happening. That what we just described is happening to that character, right? The trouble that's inside him, but the trouble that's going on with the West Side communities at that time was a crystal methamphetamine explosion, and it was very similar to the crack epidemic in East Coast cities when that first started. When you look at you can look at movies like New Jack City, and they really dramatize it, but that was actually happening. Crack was like this huge problem to inner cities going into the 80s. And a lot of people don't know how big of an impact the crystal meth explosion was in Hawaii. A lot of people who aren't from here or haven't lived here through that was horrible to a lot of families. And Campbell, the West Side, was right in the center of that. And so Byron is sort of his own self already troubled, and then going into that troubled situation. And Campbell High School was being torn apart through the 90s, from like 91 to 95, 96. And a lot of the people that I know got hooked. I mean, there was like a year there where it's like every day was, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Yeah, they're smoking ice now. And every day, oh, did you hear about so-and-so? Oh yeah, they're smoking Batu now. Oh, this guy, like every day it was somebody new. And every day somebody's dropping out of high school. Every day you go to somebody's house and their couches are gone, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? And you start seeing people with the scabs on their face and scabs on their arm. And it was pretty hectic there for a couple of years.
Byron has one epic encounter with a character named Kevin. Can you describe that relationship?
Kevin McKenzie in the novel is another troubled youth, and he's sort of presented in the beginning of the novel as your sort of stereotypical bully on like steroids, and through the beginning, psychopath, right? In training, right? So we meet him when Byron is very young, 9 years old, and he continues to be the representation of everything that Byron is afraid of, all the way up through the first book. And he sort of, Kevin is already wrapped into a very dysfunctional situation. And this is, excuse me if I'm getting a little off topic, but this is what we described before, where you and I were talking just before the meeting here, and these are bullies, right? And when you meet Byron, you're not sure, you feel for Byron, but it becomes very clear that he is an unreliable narrator, because he's a bully, and Kevin McKenzie is a bully, and these kids are bullies. But our way in, we don't really know that at first, and then we find out sort of why. They're victims of something. You know what I mean? They're victims of something. Like, these kids aren't just bullies; they're a victim of something. And what is that thing?
Can you describe a bit of how these kids, how they survived, the kinds of dealing and petty crime that enabled them to at least have some pocket money? What that's like in that school at that time?
How they got their pocket money?
Yeah.
robbing the rich kids. beating up the rich kids and selling nickel bags of weed and nickel bags of whatever drugs you could get. Sometimes you could steal mopeds. Mopeds is a good source of income. Cars when you get a little older, Um,
Yeah. One of the striking elements of that situation was the racism. Can you describe that?
yeah, yeah. It's something that I'm still sort of, race is such a hot topic, and has always been, and then now it's just sort of in our current time, it's gotten into this weird argument. But the racism going into Campbell High School and in the 90s was right in your face, and it wasn't so much systemic racism. It was like all the groups of kids. There's so many different races here in Hawaii, and Hawaii is sort of touted as a melting pot. If you'll hear that even like in Hawaii is such a melting pot. There's all these different races, but in high school they were separate and they were fighting. It's all like they're separate. That's where the Micronesians hang out. That's where the Popolos hang out. That's where the Hawaiians hang out. That's where the Samoans hang out. And the lowest race, the lowest group on this totem pole was Haoles, white people. And that's a big thing that Byron points out. And he sort of, when we're introduced to it in that world, in the world of Concrete Rainbow, he sort of accepts it and then sort of relishes in it. But he, at certain quiet times, is trying to figure it out. Is trying to figure out why it's that way. And we get to sort of tussle with it through his eyes, if that makes any sense.
It leads to a lot of fights. He's a formidable fighter himself. How did he become that good at it?
Fighting on the West Side is fighting on the West. Well, and my son tells me even at the school that he goes to, fighting is still going. Fighting in Hawaii, but everybody fought. At least a lot of kids fought, and fighting at Campbell High School at that time, was an everyday occurrence. So over time, you get good, and then some of the older kids show you some stuff, and then the West Side kickboxers was a thing, and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was coming out of there. There's a reason Max Holloway's from Waianae, right? there's a reason. So I think Byron describes it too. He's like, a couple of good arm bars, a good chokehold, a couple of good arm bars, and a few good combos is something that everybody needs to have in their back pocket.
It just always amazes me, as you describe those fights very vividly, that they survived them.
A lot of kids, and that's the thing about fighting. And a lot of people who don't, if you've never been in a fight before, you may think that but a couple punches can change your life.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so this is a complicated character, and you introduce him to the idea of being an artist, or the possibilities of being an artist, when he meets his Cindy and the filmmakers. That seems to be a little enclave that was somehow found some protection from all the predatory fighting.
Yeah, I was thinking, how to humanize Byron, and then how to sort of allow this character to have deeper musings. Like how to allow this character to sort of ask himself these questions, and I always wanted to put the solution to all of the things that he was going to, like, right next to him, like right in front of him. So it's like we're seeing this world and this journey through Byron's eyes, and then all he has to do is it's right in front of him, and here's this place where he could go and he could learn how to do these things, and he could do it, and it's right there, and it's perfect, but he can't see it, and he can't go. The obstacle is just right there, you know? And that's where all of the poetry comes from, you know, and most of the poetry for the front half of the book is all in his head, but then when he tries to say the poetry out loud, it's very different, you know?
Yeah, that's a beautiful entry for him. Yeah. Just to set in motion the actual plot, there's a raid on a Pakalola nursery, and just describe what that meant in terms of the potential for that for these kids to make a living, and also the horrors that are going to come out of that.
Right. Yeah, they come across by happenstance, come across an insane amount of marijuana, and we, up until this point, they're tough kids, you know, getting into regular sort of tough kids problems, but nothing really scary, nothing really, you know, they're going to be pretty safe for a while until they find this. And when they find this, you can tell they're in way over their head. They find a lot of weed. They find 2 football fields worth of marijuana, and it's way beyond their comprehension. It's way over their heads, and it's sort of the tipping point where we go from little kid, right? When we meet Byron, he's 15, you know, and it goes from little kid problems, you know, maybe, and then to adult problems, like super, you know, he goes from just his neighborhood problems to real heavy problems by finding that marijuana. And as the kids try to figure out what to do with it, it just tears everything apart.
There's a fascinating entry into that other world through another major character I found really extraordinary. That's Chemo. He's been in jail for some years, but he's become a philosopher when he was in jail, and he becomes Byron's mentor. You describe that relationship. It's really extraordinary in the novel. Quite fascinating.
Yeah, it's it's the only person probably, and we don't meet Chemo until we've exhausted all other male influences in Byron's life. Anybody that could have possibly helped him, you know, the art teacher from the Enclave, the all the other adult figures couldn't reach him. And then we meet Chemo, and Chemo is drawn to Byron for the same reason that Byron is drawn to Chemo. They share that sort of pain, but they also share that sort of the thing that Byron still hasn't really fully grasped yet, but the thoughts that Byron has, and the way that Byron is trying to see the world, and the questions that he's asking is something that Chemo sees right away, and he sees himself in Byron, and Byron is looking up to Chemo, and he's filling that father figure role to Byron. And it's because, and then Chemo is just almost every tough kid's, Chemo is like every tough kid's fantasy badass, if that, for lack of a better word, right? He's a street legend, but then
he's extraordinarily talented.
Yeah, extraordinary.
I found it just terrific. The other major character is a shadowy uncle, who is, I guess, Chemo's father. And just describe what that's about.
Uncle is a sort of culmination of he's running a couple of gambling houses and a couple of drug organizations and a couple of prostitution rings on the island. He's the head of this crime organization for quite a few decades, and he's there's a lot of gambling houses, and he's running those, and dog fights and cock fights and just a lot of that. And he Uncle is pure. Uncle is evil, and just sort of feeding off the entire community. And Chemo came up in that, and is trying to pull away, trying to figure his world out the same way Byron is trying to figure out his world. And the more and more we find out about Uncle, the more creepy and disgusting and yeah, bad dude, man. Bad dude.
Okay, so we now have a pretty good idea of the setting and what Byron is going to be living through. How about doing some readings now to really get a sense of how intense this novel is and how intense Byron's life is?
All right. Let's start with, you were talking about the Enclave, and you were talking about, we were talking about Byron, poetry being a way for Byron to sort of attack thoughts that are bigger than himself and thoughts that he can't understand. And then we were talking about all he would have to do is just go into that art room or go into those places of sanctuary. And let's start with something like that. This is Byron and Cindy talking about the art room. She looked amazing when she laughed. Her whole face opened up and her eyes danced. The sound of it came from deep in her belly and it echoed in her chest. I wanted to be inside that laugh. You shouldn't come around Mr. Mervin's class anymore, she said, wiping the tears away from her eyes. Wait, what? I was waiting for a punchline. That room is for artists. It's a safe place for weirdos and kids in trench coats who draw beautiful pictures and future directors and poets, not for drug dealers and bad boys like you. It was hard for her to say, at least. She couldn't look me in the eye when she mumbled it. Dang, that's fucked up, I said. Well, what you gonna do in there besides tease people for not being cool? She asked. I started to say all the things I could do, and I realized I couldn't think of anything that she would call art. I don't know. I could learn how to make movies and shit like you did, she said, as I've said that softly. And then she replied, you could, but that takes a lot of patience and planning. I mean, there's a lot to it, more than you think. I could teach you, but she shrugged her shoulders. Then it hit me. Oh, rap is art, I blurted out. Poetry is art, she said. I doubt what you do is poetry. Hey, yo, how could you even say that? Didn't you just say some shit about being ignorant, but still talking? I was starting to yell now. Okay, spit some shit, homie. That's what you say, right? Drop that flow, son. She was laughing now. She was very high. I yanked my beat up rhyme book out of my shorts and looked for something that she might give me a little credit for. A half of a Campbell soup rhyme, a song about Peter Tosh wearing posh osh bigosh. There was nothing. I had written nothing but trash since I got to Hawaii. As I flipped through the pages, all I saw was half ideas and crude scribble lines with crossouts right before them. Some of them were completely inked out, vulgar poems that belonged scratched on the inside of a bathroom stall. I searched my mind for something that might have substance. Maybe I could just put it together right here on the spot. I found nothing. There were no actual thoughts in my head. It was a raging symphony of static, a waterfall of white noise and busy signals going over a cliff to the broken concrete and shattered television sets below. She jumped up and stood there in an animated b-boy stance, saying, yeah, G, word, bust it, dog, lace that shit, God. I had no choice. I spit my most recent thing. I take a hit of Pacololo and jam with Macololo. I always got a cruise, so I'm never going solo. The main reason I suppose that my legend grows. I stick my foot in your ass and time I shoot through your nose. I can strike a pose and I don't hose. And I stopped. I could not continue with the look she was making. Her face was contorted like she was eating a moldy lemon. It took almost 10 seconds of silence for her to regain her composure. Remember our deal about being all sensitive? I'm being sincere, she said with a straight face. Hey, yo, fuck you. I don't need to be in your little stupid art room anyway. My voice cracked and my eyes were starting to water again. God damn it. This was not the day to run into her. I'm sorry. She stood up and started to walk away, but then turned back. I'm sorry. That's actually what I came here to talk to you about to begin with. It's not about your rapping thing. I'm sorry about whatever's going on with you, but you can't come in there. I'm sorry, she said. Hey, yo, fuck you, bitch. I ain't trying to hear whatever it is you're yapping about anyway. I was just minding my own business and you came here with your weird ass. I was just trying to be cool, I said. That's the problem. You're trying to be cool. Bitch, get to stepping, I said, and turned towards the dumpster. Cynthia walked away. I sat there letting the sun burn me. Only my face was in the shade now. What the fuck just happened? I walked over to the big tree just off campus and laid down in the shade. The grass was long and I completely disappeared in it. I watched it lean back and forth over me. Maybe I could just go. I could just exhale and let my soul out of my body. It would move through the grass. Maybe the grass would breathe me in. I read somewhere that if you breathe out CO2, the grass breathes it in. The grass breathes out oxygen, and then we breathe it in. Through it all, the molecules themselves separate and come back together, but remain the same. So that the air we breathe today is the same air that my ancestors exhaled hundreds or even thousands of years ago. The same air passing through an African man standing in a field somewhere passes through the African grass and up into the clouds and then down into the ocean. It evaporates back up into the clouds and blows across the planet for years until I breathe it in. If I could breathe out my soul, the grass would breathe it in. I was sure of it. The air was here before me. It would be here after me. My soul just used it for a small moment. And the things that make up my body will return to the earth. I just use them for a moment. When that moment's over, does my soul stay on the breath and in the air? I jumped up from the grass. The school bus was in the parking lot and the kids were starting to gather. I must have been asleep for over an hour now. My thoughts were starting to fade. I laid back down for a moment and went around my head, picking up pieces of a cloud, scooping chunks of ideas and questions and putting them together until they sat nicely, one on top of the other. Then I ran through it 3 times until patterns of words were familiar by sound. Where does your soul go? Does the grass from graveyards breathe exhaled air from those buried underneath? Does the past pass away when we pass away? Or is it something that couldn't have been any other way? It's nothing new. Our irrelevance is puzzling. The puzzle being that because we are being, it doesn't mean that we're free from the obscene thoughts. We're nothing but dust and wind, lust and sin. Can a heartbeat find some kind of rhythm to a song that belonged to long forgottens? I wonder when the breeze blows, do these flows sound similar to Negroes with green toes on a middle passage to being sold when he froze? Did his lips taste love? Did he know then that his blood would be generations later locked up as a thug that would breathe the same air and see the same sun? I tussle with these images. We're limited by our belief of what the limit is. Can we stand up? Can we unlatch the shackles of the handcuffs that were wrapped around the soul of what this man was? His hopes, his dreams don't die. They pass on through song to those who experience the essence of his charm. Choose to live strong. Choose to laugh at what can't be changed and change what can't be laughed at. I pass that through hip hop, to break beats in poetry, exactly the way the wind told it to me, word for word as I heard it in inspiration, and hopefully the meaning wasn't lost in translation.
Wow. Phenomenal reading and terrific sense of breaking out of a shell. That's just terrific. For a change of pace, can you? He has a number of major adventures, surfing or and so on. Can you describe? Read one of those?
Will, and I have to say, so you sent me that thing and you said you like the Makaha Beach. I'm going to read the Makaha Beach. Okay. But before I say that, I have to say that the official time is 4:25. My wife also thought that I should read Makaha Beach, and I was going to read something else. So she is officially right. The time of admission is 4:26. She is officially right. I have to say that. and I was wrong. All right. Hoi. I snapped out of that thought and stared blankly towards whoever made that sound. Hoi. Wake up, brah, said the Hapatam Selek. He was pointing towards the horizon. Then I saw all the surfers lay down on their boards and start paddling as fast as they could. It was a monster outside set. Kimo was already set up for the first wave, and he started to lift him up into the air. He stood up in a super crouch and slid down the wave like a rock, skipping over the water. His bottom turned and carved back up to the top. It was graceful. He cut back just as I was paddling over the top, and he sprayed me. Kimo was playfully riding these waves of death while I was in my final minutes on this earth. I saw the next wave in the set, and I knew instantly this was the one. I was in the right spot. I turned around and began paddling. Fear was gripping me, trying to freeze my arms and back and neck. I forced myself to breathe and measure my stroke so that I could be in the right spot as the wave rolled underneath me. The ocean in front of me began to drop away like I was going up in an elevator. I was in the perfect spot. The last jolt of fear sparked in me as I realized if I stopped paddling, maybe it would just pass underneath me. That bitch-ass thought was instantly replaced by the knowledge that this was the only second wave in the set. Paddling for this one and not catching it would leave me in the break zone for however many waves there were behind it. No, the only chance at making it out alive was to commit. I sprint paddled until I was looking down a wall of water that was over 30 feet high. I felt the moment. It grabbed me and I thought it was going to pitch me over the falls. I stood on the board and crouched just as I went flying down the wave. I was trying to bottom turn, but I was going too fast. My turn wasn't sharp enough. By the time I was headed back up the wave, I was in the wrong spot. I didn't have enough speed. The wave pitched over my head and I was stalled inside a massive barrel. There was a moment, a second of awareness, a second of realizing how beautiful and rare it was to see this amount of power from this perspective, and also realizing that there was no way to stop what was about to happen. In a last-ditch effort, I tried to dive into the wave, hoping I could punch through the back of it. On smaller waves, this works. Instead, the wave simply absorbed me into itself and rolled me up over the top. I felt weightless for 3 or 4 seconds as me and thousands of gallons of water flew through the air. We came crashing down, and the impact of my body hitting the rushing water below, combined with the pounding of the water above, knocked from me whatever air I had been trying to save for the hold down. The time I would be able to stay underwater just went from 3 minutes to a mere 30 seconds. I could feel the wave was going to try to send me back over the falls, and I knew I wouldn't make it a second time. I pulled and kicked in an effort to punch through the back of the wave, praying that it would have less power after the initial break. It grabbed me again. This time it folded me backwards and my left heel kicked me hard in the back of the head. Now I was in the whitewash. It was strong and violent. It twisted and bent my body. It pushed me down and down and down. My right leg was still attached to the surfboard and it was getting yanked in every direction. It was only a matter of time before the leash snapped or my hip came out of its socket. I reached for my ankle and tried to undo the leash or at least hold my leg. Then something snapped. I felt the energy of the wave disappear. With my last seconds of consciousness, I swam up to the surface. The hiss of the foam dissipating was loud as that room full of snakes that Indiana Jones got trapped in. But I could breathe. My leash had not snapped. My board had. All that was still attached to me was about 1.5 feet of the tail. With numb and tingly hands, I reached down into the water and shakily undid my leash. I saw the next wave in the set less than 30 seconds away, curling and reflecting in the rising sun. And I also heard yelling, "Brah, can I just let the fucker drown?" shouted the lifeguard on a jet ski pulling a floaty rescue board with handles. "He not gonna drown, just wait," Kimo yelled back. They were arguing about 200 feet to my left in the channel while I treaded water as calmly as possible, trying to take slow, measured breaths to get ready for the next wave. The wall of whitewash was at least 10 feet high. As it reached me, I took a deep breath and dove down as far as I could before getting pulled back up again. I fought it with long frog strokes like swimming up the rushing river. Its energy passed as I popped my head up. "See, brah, what I told you. Go back inside your tower and finish your breakfast," yelled Kimo. "Whatever, brah. This my job, huh? I'm not disrespecting you, Chemo. I know like no trouble, but brah, it's my job. I cannot just let this fucker drown, lamented the lifeguard. Look, brother, I stay right here. You're not gonna drown. I just let him swim it out. I try and teach him something, Chemo said. I gotta stay right here too, brother. I gotta. The next wave was on me, and I did the same thing. I repeated this for the next 4 waves. Each time I was working my way closer and closer to the shore. Each time I could hear Chemo and the lifeguard arguing. As I climbed up onto the sand, I realized that my head was bleeding. I sat down and dug a shallow hole in the sand next to me and started throwing up salt water. I know can just let somebody drown, yeah? You know, pleaded the lifeguard. Yeah, no worries, said Chemo. Hey, no disrespect, Chemo, the lifeguard asked. I said no worries, said Chemo dismissively. He walked up to me and grabbed me by my hair and dragged me up the beach. I stood up the best I could, but I was still throwing up and I couldn't get my balance. How was that, you fucker? He was saying over and over in my ear till we got back to the truck. He punched me in the stomach and dropped me on the ground. I leaned against his huge right front tire. The sun had fully risen and it was hot. I sat in the shade of the truck on the gravel trying to feel as if I had gotten all of the salt water out. Chemo slammed his board in the back and then just stood there, looking at the sun and the mountains. I watched him out of the corner of my eye and tried to be as quiet as possible. I don't know about what to do about you, he said in a deep, almost whisper. His pidgin accent had disappeared. He came over to me and sat down in the sand and dirt and leaned back on the car tire opposite me. He was completely in the shade. The sun lit his face and head, giving him a godlike glow. A gangster god. Chemo, the god of gangsters. I chuckled to myself. What about this is funny? He asked softly. Nah, just sitting there with the sun on your head like that. You look, I whimpered. What? Like gangster, like a gangster got. See, that fucking gangster stuff is ridiculous. It's the problem with you. You got this stupid ass fantasy that's like a frame or a lens you're looking through. It's narrow and it's distorting everything and it's cutting shit off to the point where you really don't see much, he said. I don't understand, right? Listen, you almost died. Why? He asked. I threw up more salt water and hunched over, spitting and drooling for a while. And he sat there patiently waiting. Because the waves were too big. Why were the waves too big? Because the swell was, no, the waves weren't too big. Me and Uncle Domino, Kekani, Petey, we were ripping. Why did you almost die? He asked again. I wasn't used to your board. I usually surf on a. He leaned forward and he smacked me upside the head. Not very hard. He sat back and spoke with the same softness. Stop lying. Why did you almost die? Oh, the waves were too big because I could feel tears starting and I stopped talking. No way I was going to cry in front of Chemo. The waves were too big for you, he said simply. I nodded yes. Why would you paddle into waves that were too big for you? I couldn't talk. I couldn't shake my head to show I don't know, because if I did, tears might fall. I forced myself to face him. I forced myself not to look away, to look him in his disapproving eyes, because you had to, because you lied about being able to surf monster waves to me and anyone who would listen. And when I told you that it was hard, and that it takes many, many years of surfing and knowledge and skills and all that shit, you doubled down like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm a natural because I surfed 30-foot waves in California one time. How do you think that sounds now that you've been out on a big day? He waited for a real answer. I wiped my face and was able to get out one word. Stupid. Stupid. Right. And honestly, this ain't even that big. This is maybe 15 feet Hawaiian. Imagine who you would have to be to surf 30, 50-foot waves. That's like 25 feet Hawaiian. Do you think the person who can do that is a 15-year-old bullshit and run away from California? He asked. I'm not from California. I'm from Maka. He smacked me in the head again. This time a little harder. I don't know what to think of you. How do I know what's true and what's bullshit? If I wanted to show you how to surf big waves or anything, how would I know where to start? I wouldn't. I can't show you anything. You already know everything. All you motherfucking kids nowadays walking around talking all this fake gangster shit, act like you know. But if you actually act like you know, then you never really know. I can't do anything with that. I can't let you hang with us. I can't bring you in. I can't give you a job and a place to sleep and eat. I can't show you how we run this shit. I can't. You're a bullshitter. And bullshitters need to be alone. or with other bullshitters. They stand around bullshitting each other all day. I'm not a bullshitter. I looked him in the eye. It took everything I had. I was cold by then, sitting there in the shade. I was shivering and sick, but I looked him in the eye and repeated it. I'm not a bullshitter. You are, he said quietly, then looked away. He watched the waves for a while. I stared at him until my eyes burned. When I blinked, tears rolled down my face. I wiped them off and sneezed. Huge gobs of salt water and snot came out of my nose. Kimo got up and grabbed a towel from the back of the truck and handed it to me. He stayed standing, looking down on me. Come on, I'll take you back to Ever Beach, get you something to eat, and then we go our separate ways. I stood up and I pushed him. He wasn't ready and he fell backwards against the side of the truck, turning sideways to catch his balance. I'm not a fucking bullshitter, I said louder. I had my fists up. He looked at them and he smiled a little. He was thinking. He looked almost proud. He put his hands up slightly in surrender and made a reassuring face. Hey, kid, you know how this fight would end. I'm not a fucking bullshitter, I said again. It would end the same way you surfing big waves would end. He paused and waited for me to think it through. I did, and I kept my hands up. Why did you almost die today? He asked again. I had never seen the way he was looking at me before. Not on a man. He was pushing me towards something. I couldn't understand why he would call me a liar, but then stand there like a loving dad teaching his son to ride a bike. I couldn't understand. I didn't like anything about what was going on. There was a knot in my throat. Even if I wanted to answer, I couldn't. I just wanted to punch him for making me feel this way. I wanted to punch him. I knew he could demolish me, but I could get one punch in, and that would be worth it. One punch for thinking he could teach me some bullshit about bullshitting. Everybody is bullshit. Everybody's a fucking liar. Teachers, politicians, motherfucking firemen, parents, everyone. Who is he to teach me about lying? Who is he to teach me anything about anything? He's not my dad. My stepdad ain't my dad. My dad ain't my dad. My dad is bullshit. No one can tell me shit. I swung as fast as I could to get it in before he knocked me out. It landed square on his left cheek. He didn't try to block it or move it or anything. He just took it. He blinked his eyes a few times and rolled his head around. And that was as far as my anger could take me. I had no more. I put my arms down and waited for him to kill me. This was Kimo. No one wins in a fight with Kimo. Why did you die today? Why did you almost die? He asked softly. I looked at the sand and dirt. He wasn't going to use his fists to beat me. He would use his words to beat me.
Wow. Absolutely fabulous. I'd like you to do two other passages. One is one with Cindy, because she's a major catalyst character.
Yeah.
And the other one is the Crystal City one. And then I hope we have time for your Ever Beach one.
Okay. I like this one. My head was filled with Cuervo, an ocean of it. My thoughts and ideas were scattered across its shoreline. The question of why I was going to Cynthia's house swam in and out of the tequila playfully. I tried to catch it, maybe grab its ankle or wrist as it dove down. Its giggles made bubbles. Every time I thought about it, more important thoughts distracted me. Thoughts like, who the fuck were all those people at my birthday party? How long until the cops come and shut it down? And at the moment, the most important thought, am I too drunk to be driving this moped? The headlight was duct taped and bounced in every which way except where you needed it. The whole front end had been smashed and then bent and welded back crooked. My legs wouldn't fit behind the handlebars, so I had to keep them spread wide open in order to sit on it. And whenever I hit the brakes, the front wheel would pull so hard to the left, I nearly flipped over. The only way I could keep my balance was to go fast. I made it to a driveway, and I remembered the kid who let me use it said that it was hot wired, so don't turn it off. He also said there was no kickstand, but don't lay it down or gas would spill out. I thought about balancing it on the side of her house, but what if it fell? I honked a little horn and it made the sound of Big Bird being raped. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the moped. I started beatboxing and revving the pathetic motor and then hitting the horn in rhythm. I didn't notice the lights in the house had turned on and someone was arguing in Tagalog. Cynthia came out of the house wearing an oversized t-shirt and probably nothing else. What the fuck are you doing? She yelled through her teeth. Yo, yo, listen to this shit, I said, laughing. I started to beat back up and she ran over and grabbed my hand. She was mad. I sat there quietly for a second, just taking in how sexy she looked like this. Oh, I'm sorry, I said finally. Sorry? Yeah, yeah, it was a dope beat though. Yeah, I heard it. And it was dope, I said, smiling. She didn't say anything. Her face kept changing while she asked and answered questions to herself in her head. It's your birthday, she finally blurted out, answering her own question. Yeah, there's a party. Yeah, I know. Everyone's there. Not me. That's why I came to get you. Not me on purpose. Well, I came to your birthday party. You crashed my birthday party. You want to crash into my birthday party? I said grinningly as I slowly patted the broken handlebars. She laughed. Then she pulled at some of the duct tape. Her head tilted and her hair fell over her face. You could have asked me before, she said in almost a whisper. Her shoulders slowly swung from side to side. This was such a different person that I almost thought that maybe I was at the wrong girl's house. She went on in almost a shy voice. It's like you had to check the party first to see if there was any hotter chicks there. And then you were like, no hot chicks. Guess I'll just go to Sin's house and beg her to come to the party, even though I never asked her in the first place, she said to the duct tape. First of all, I'm not begging. Her eyebrows pushed together and her nostrils flared. I changed my tone fast and reached through her hair and lifted her chin to me. It was a surprise party, Cindy. Like, I didn't even know people knew I had a birthday. Everybody has a birthday. Listen, I didn't think anyone knew that it was my birthday. And honestly, there's a lot hotter chicks there. That's not funny, she said, smiling and playfully hitting me. Everyone's acting like they know you, talking about how you beat the shit out of Kevin and all these guys and how you're fucking this girl and that girl. But I know most of it's bullshit. It's all bullshit. And you're like nowhere to be found. And most people that are talking about you don't know you. They're lying. I know you. But I can't tell anybody because it'll just become part of these bullshit stories. Like it's like folklore or something. And I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not one of your hoes. Whatever it is that we did, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, that wasn't bullshit to me. And you seemed, she stopped. She had worked herself up, and now I recognized her. Her eyes were watery, and she was standing with her feet apart like she was challenging something. It took me a second to realize she was waiting for me to say something. That wasn't bullshit to me, I said. I was waiting for you, and you never called, and all I hear is that you're fucking all these girls. I was about to tell her some game about other girls or about how I'm a player and she needs to understand that and get with the program. Then I thought about that breeze that had blown up from Makaha on the beach. I thought about the grass and what Chemo had said, the sound of the monster waves. I thought about the truth. I don't have a phone or even a house. I'm fucking homeless. Chemo lets me crash on the floor of one of his empty houses, but there's no electricity or hot water or anything. My stepdad packed all my shit in my bullshit car and kicked me the fuck out. Christmas came and went, and I sat in the dark in this empty house with no lights. I dropped out of fucking school. You said it yourself. I'm like a homeless drug dealer bully. But when I'm next to you, I feel weird shit. Like you're fucking amazing. I mean, you sing and you make cool movies and shit, and you're fine as fuck. And I'm next to you, and I can't breathe. I can't talk, and I sound like a fucking idiot. I mean, you're smarter than me. You talk circles around me. You see right through me, or into me, or some shit. I can't stand that feeling, but I can't stand not having it. But I know I ain't shit. My voice cracked. And I caught myself. For months, I had been either dodging these thoughts or trying to catch them. I had failed at both. Now, here I was hearing them for the first time. I wanted to be alone with them. They were embarrassing. I quickly packed them back up and promised myself I would look at them later. Almost under my breath, I said, hey, yo, fuck you. I don't know why I fucking came here. I know you ain't even want to fuck with me anyway. She kissed me. It felt like I was falling. She was the only thing to grab onto. I could feel her hot skin through her t-shirt. I let the moped fall over and I squeezed her and I kissed her and I held on as I dived into that feeling that I had been looking for ever since I left our house so long ago. She ripped herself away. Wait, I'm coming with you. She ran into the house and started screaming at her parents in Tagalog. Other people's house lights started turning on. I stood there for a second, going over her lingering smell. Toothpaste, Pantene, Dove, and gasoline? I turned and saw the gas spilling out of the moped onto the driveway. I picked it back up and the headlight fell off. I was trying to hold the moped while reaching over for the headlight when Cynthia came running out of her house. Go, go, go. Her dad was behind her with a machete. I pulled the moped backward down the driveway and Cynthia jumped on the back before I could even start pushing it forward. Her dad swung the machete and cut the remaining wires off the headlight. He was yelling in Tagalog and Cynthia was screaming back at him right in my ear. I didn't know how to start the moped. I was fumbling with the duct tape wires when I noticed a screwdriver and a busted ignition switch laying in the disembodied panel pocket. I put them together and twisted just as the second machete blow shattered the plastic on the handlebars. Now she was screaming at me, "He's gonna fucking kill you! Let's go, let's go!" The moped started and I opened the throttle all the way up and it sounded like we were gonna take off. But we moved so slow, I actually laughed. Her dad was literally walking next to us, yelling at me. He finally swung at me and I caught his arm. I held on to him as the moped gathered speed. More house lights came on and people were coming out of their houses. He was at full sprint. I let go of his arm and he almost fell. He was running too fast to swing, so he just kept sprinting and yelling. We hit the end of Haimanu Street and I turned out wide on North Roll and she drifted into the background. The wind hit us and she squeezed onto me. I felt something in the way she held me. We flew through the broken streets of Eva Beach. There was nothing to worry about. No one to answer to. No one could catch us. We were going to fly away. This moment was ours and no one else's. As long as we never land, this moment could be forever. She was laughing like a little girl on a merry-go-round. "I can't go back," she yelled. "What?" "I can never go back," she said as she bit my neck. Me either, I thought. "Take me with you," she said in my ear. "I am," I yelled back. "No, like for real, take me with you." "I am. Right off the motherfucking cliff, baby." She put her arms out and her black and red flannel flapped in the wind.
Oh my goodness.
Fabulous. We've got, well, it doesn't matter. We can go a little bit over, but I'd like you to read the Crystal City one and then end with the Ever Beach.
As soon as me and Maka hopped over the cars on the other side of Crystal City, I instantly felt better. There was a clearing in the Kiave trees at the waterline. The soft wind from the ocean found its way through and up the path, pushing away the smell of the drainage ditch and the human shit. It was quiet. This side of the bridge wasn't lit up with floodlights. Something about the combination of the trees and the big concrete wall and the canal blocked out the light and the rap music from the bridge. The moon was almost full, and the natural light seemed cleaner somehow. I knew the further I got from Alex, the better I would feel. Maka seemed to feel the same way. "Hey, grab one moped, cause let's sell it," he said, picking up one of the 7 or 8 mopeds. I picked up the one closest to me and it looked like it was a pretty good condition except for all the wires hanging out by the ignition. I pushed the button to run and the Kickstarter did nothing. Maka started right up and yelled, "Screwdriver!" I looked and there was a screwdriver in a cubby box. I shoved it in and kicked it. We were off. The path was muddy, but nowhere near as bad as the town side of the bridge. I figured out how to turn on my headlight and me and Maka ripped through the overgrown path, swerving around holes and big rocks and ducking under low-hanging trees and branches. It felt like the speeder bike scene in Return of the Jedi. The faster I went, the less I could think about Alex. The less I could think about Chemo and Alex. The less I could think about Chemo having anything to do with Crystal City. About me having anything to do with Crystal City. No matter how many ways I flipped this quarter, I couldn't get heads. This wasn't selling weed in a college dorm. This wasn't doing coke in Waikiki hotel rooms with tourists from Texas who talk funny. This wasn't taking Mandy's with Japanese girls and talking them into a threesome. This wasn't stealing rented Mustangs and racing them back to the West Side for fun. This wasn't fun. This wasn't selling fun to fun people. This was selling misery to the miserable. This was selling pain to poverty. This was feeding on the last bit of life from the festering, decomposing victims who had been flushed down the bottom of the sewer. This is what chemo had meant. I can't handle this. I can't swallow the sewage. I wasn't cut out for this. And he had known. Just like it was obvious to me that Alex couldn't go where I went, it must be obvious to Alex that I shouldn't be here. Both of us were obvious to chemo. I felt see-through and I wanted to run. I wanted to take the moped and stream it all the way up the path out of Crystal City. The path opened up again and there were a handful of tents and people milling around. Maka slowed down and circled around. I followed him and stopped a few feet behind him. I didn't stop the moped because I didn't want to have any problems starting it back up. Maka reached in his pockets and handed a few little baggies to three kids with bandanas and fake gold chains. They handed him an empty Gatorade bottle filled with cash. "What is this?" asked Maka. "Alex said put them in one plastic bag," said the youngest kid. "Ah, this look like one plastic bag to you," said Maka. "Oh, we know more plastic bag, that's why," he said, the older one. "Ah, this is stupid. Lolo, can still yet see the money inside," said Maka, holding up the Gatorade bottle. I thought of chemo insisting me putting cash in an envelope. I guess he settled for plastic bags down in Crystal City. Maka slapped the older kid in the head and then went on to slapping all three of them. And then we were off again. We came to a fence with a gate, but it was cut with a big hole and mopeds were big enough to get through. After that, the path was paved and we were riding through a manicured bike lawn. There were no tents here, just beautiful rolling grassy hills and well-kept coconut trees. We came to a parking lot and Maka did the handoff again. We continued ever following the bike path and Maka would stop at a group of kids, drop off baggies and pick up plastic bags filled with crumbled, wet, dirty $1 and $5 bills. We crossed the metal bridge and then the path looped around to a small utility building. "Hey, try leave the moped? We go rest a little bit," said Maka, lying his moped down on the side. I followed him down the nice grass into the kiavi trees. There were 4 folding chairs, mud right up next to the marshy water. It was quiet and the moon was shining down on the water. Maka said nothing, but started pulling out one of the baggies and put the rock into a glass pipe. I looked away. I looked out at the water. There was no wind. It was a perfect mirror of the night sky. Maka took a long pull and the smoke hung right in front of us. It smelled like a burning swimming pool. I turned and looked at him. He smiled, and I remembered that smile. He looked like a teddy bear. "Hey, I'm sorry for making us go to the poly that day," I said. "What?" he asked, licking his yellow teeth and flaring his nostrils. He looked at the pipe but stopped, forcing himself to listen to me. "I'm sorry for all of this. Your brother, everything. It's my fault," I whispered because I was afraid my voice would crack. I could feel my eyes filling with water. "Nah, no worries, dirty Q-tip. It's not your fault. We don't need to worry about all of that, huh? Gosh, it's life. It just goes. You cannot do nothing. Fuck them. How you gonna tell me one wave came and smashed us all on the rocks and it's your fault? You don't make the waves, you fucker. You get one big head if you think you control anything. Fuck them. We hit the rocks." "We hit the rocks," I nodded. "And now I hit the rocks," he said and took another hit. "Ha, I see what you did there, you fucking clown," I said and poked him in the belly like I used to do in another world. He laughed and held out the pipe to me. I stopped. I looked at it. And then I smoked it. Me and my friend flew through the trees all night. We laughed and rode a speeder bike at the speed of light. We soared under and over branches, around the twisted path where chance is that it leads to nowhere and back again. From nowhere, we laughed again at the joke, knowing it was on us. Tears pooled out of our eyes that were wide open to the deep black wind in front of us, charging forward, chasing something that was behind us. Fuck it, hand on our nuts, middle finger in the air. Fuck it, I don't care.
Wow. Okay, well, we're gonna have to bring this to an end, but let's bring it to an end with a great piece of
A piece of poetry?
yes.
Honestly, It's so far back that it's hard to remember. In hindsight, on trees of youth, the proof hangs like frames from still photos. We call police popos and hid in tall grass on our ass until the sun rose. Froze and searchlights, the first fights were lost on Ever Beach Road, like 9 years old. My pops told me the only way for you to lose is to not fight back. So you go right back and you kick and spit and talk shit until the end. And it don't matter if you win. He ain't fighting you again. So bruised up, tooth chipped, blood soaked and crying, I went back and cracked his fucking head with a brick. I moved up to high school, the same rules apply, except I was 6 feet. Now who the fuck want beef? I kept my profit in my left pocket and what I owe below my nut sack right next to my ass crack. The drug game is shitty, gritty, pity. It's all we know. I braided my fro. I dated a hoe. First time, I busted in like under a minute. Well, fuck it, I admit it, just happy to finally get it. Seduced by the induced euphoria of ass and thighs and class I'm high, asking why don't we cut and fuck, we'll be right back. In my Mazda GLC, hatchback. Hard times and pain often fade into something vague. What was the color of the paint on that Chevrolet? What was that pretty girl's name in the lingerie? And all her silly friends. And all those weekends, stolen tires, smoke billows, and the dark black pillows up and down what street? Who's that kid we beat? Who's that silly old man helped us drive 50 pounds? Does the city sounds mix with our lost innocence? In a sense, it's forever out of beach. Forever reach. Too much fucking, fighting, drinking, drug dealing. Old E's my best friend. I'm left back again. Fuck this bullshit. I dropped out. Now my mom's is out on the corner in her nightshirt. 1 a.m, screaming, rain pouring, I'm leaving, ignoring her voice as she cries in the rearview mirror. I hear her though, and it echoes in the giggles of coked up hoes. Sometimes when wind blows, I can hear what I'm supposed to be. But mostly, I cheat life, and life cheats me back. I got the rhythm, dropped interior provoc, crushed velvet. I stop on the corner of every block. Let them all see I'm Mosley, grossly encrusted by the demons. Don't provoke me. I get high all day, drink all night. I cuss and shit and fucking fight. I'm right in the wrong way. Fuck arraignments, district attorneys, judge, juries, and the plaintiffs. Bail is a monthly offense. I make payments. The veil of can't fail, expect to be famous. I lied to myself to believe what crowds told me, and I was high enough to believe the clouds hold me. Because hard times and pain often fade into something vague. What was the color of the paint on that Chevrolet? What was this pretty girl's name in the lingerie? And all her silly friends, and all those weekends. Stolen tires, smoke billows, and the dark black pillows up and down what street? Who's that kid we beat? Who's that silly old man helped us drive 50 pounds? Does the city sounds mix with our lost innocence? In a sense, it's forever out of reach. It's forever beach.
Wow. Well, that's as much as we've got time for, Les. We could have gone another hour quite easily.
Hey, Roger, thank you, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this work with you, and I really appreciate everything that you've done. It's just amazing, and it's a wild ride. And without the community of mentors like yourself, helping young artists move into new territories and helping young artists grow, I don't know what we would do, man. For real, I really appreciate it.
It's Concrete Rainbow is available on Amazon. Anywhere else? Anywhere else apart from Amazon?
Amazon, audiobook on Amazon. It's actually anywhere you can, Barnes and Noble's books. It's Kindle, Nook, all of the places.
But the point
But
is,
concreterainbow.com will lead you to anywhere you want to find it.
it's both an audio and a printed book and an ebook.
You're right. Right.
Well, you really came through it fabulously. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks a lot, Roger. I appreciate it, brother.
It was a privilege to present you. Yeah. Okay. I have one final message. I was so taken by what you were doing and saying that I almost forgot. We're going to try and be everything we can to be in person next year. Return to being an in-person 2-day festival. Takes a lot of funding.
That'll be awesome.
Fundraiser on January the 26th, And I hope you put that in your calendar, and I'll be sure to be reminding you for the rest of this month and onward. Again, thank you so much, Jason. Terrific.
All right, brother. Take care.
Aloha.